Let's go back to 2019. E3 is upon us. Remember that little event?
You're breathtaking!
Many trailers and reveals are announced, and among them was a little something called Elden Ring. A game made by the creators of Dark Souls, with world building provided by George R.R. Martin. The hype is real, but can it possibly meet expectations? Several years pass, a global pandemic, a few more trailers, it's 2022, and the game releases. You walk out of the starting area and see this beautiful land before you. Wondering where to go, you see a golden knight on top of his horse. Maybe it's a friendly NPC that you can ask for directions. Or maybe one of the starting enemies. You run over and see a health bar. Filled with confidence you think, I can take him. And then...
Look at me.
Sure.
Look at me.
Sure.
I'm the captain now.
Is Elden Ring special? Is it just another Souls game? Is it bad? Is it a masterpiece? Let's dive in. If you're like me, your expectations were tempered at the beginning. There was concern about whether an open world game made by FromSoft that had a similar style to Dark Souls would even work or be a hit. And how open world would it really be? Would this type of game make sense for the Souls-like formula? We'd seen many titles that filled us with hype before, only to end up as disappointments on day one, releasing with broken promises or just plain broken. But I think it's fair to say that Elden Ring either hit most people's expectations or exceeded them. The game came out with glowing reviews from most critics and players alike. I didn't get a chance to immediately play, I think at the time I was busy with some other things. But after I cleansed myself of some temporary MOBA addiction, I turned it on and got sucked in. You know, there's few games out there that can give you that magical feeling. You know what I'm talking about, right? That feeling you got with that one special game you played. Probably as a child. You felt enchanted by the world, lost in it, and wanted to explore and discover. The game sucked you in, and you played and played until late into the night. We then get older, this feeling becomes rare, but every once in a while, that feeling can come back with another game that just clicks. It makes you remember that gaming can be special and an art. I did get that feeling in Elden Ring, maybe you did too. Certain games can come and bring back that childhood wonder you once felt, not simply following formulas or trends in the industry. When I played Elden Ring, I felt a sense of excitement, exploring and wondering what was before me. And with that, let's talk about the world and its design.
But it is beautiful.
Elden Ring feels like it's designed by an alien.
There's a theme to this discussion. In what way?
It's so unusual. It's incredibly creative, and the art is stunning.
This quote holds true, and I think that Elden Ring's world is very unique. It does feel unusual, alien and broken, but beautiful at the same time. It's different. When you explore the environment, the landmarks cascade over one another. There's depth and different layers all across the land. It isn't an obvious path railroading the player to a specific location. Yes, there are grace points that give a subtle direction, but the land feels, for lack of a better word, natural. Almost like a real place with history to what led to its current form, and not so obviously placed down by a level designer in a very gamified way. Compared to so many other titles that lead the player in one clear direction, with maybe a branching path or two, and a treasure chest at the end. When first playing Elden Ring, I had so many surprised reactions of awe. I'd uncover a hidden cave completely off the normal path, would expect a small dungeon, and suddenly I'm going deeper than the dwarfs in the mines of Moria, anticipating that Balrog to pounce on me at any second. And these areas, let me tell you, were huge and had completely different designs and visuals. You just think to yourself, holy shit, where am I? I'd be so intrigued to explore and find myself looking at the clock. Oh no, it's 3 AM. There's lots of moments like that in Elden Ring, and one of the biggest reasons that the exploration is just so fun. I'd come across uniquely designed areas and enemies, and it would fill my curiosity with wanting to know more, to just keep exploring, to see what I might uncover next. And FromSoft aren't afraid to put some of these deceptively huge areas in places that most players would even completely miss. I love this. It makes these moments where you discover them on your journey so much more special. So many games are afraid to hide parts of the game from the player, especially an area that takes some effort to design and is of considerable size. I don't know of many games that would have the courage to do this. They'd see it as a waste of resources, but designers should understand. Aspects like this make a game feel special. It motivates players to want to explore your worlds, to be excited what they might uncover, and adds replayability. Then there's the level design, the interconnectedness of the world, especially in the big legacy dungeons. You'll know what I mean if you've played the game and come across these areas. Places like Stormville Castle, the Golden City, or the sewers below. There's many more. But when you start to explore, you begin to see how interconnected they are, with layers upon layers looping around and on top of each other like a well thought out labyrinth. I mentioned it briefly in my last video, but FromSoft have shown moments of greatness with level design, and sometimes I feel it's not talked about enough. When you explore these areas, you begin to see how well thought out they are. It makes the exploration more rewarding and encourages you to check every corner and ledge you might reach, because oftentimes you can, and something special may be waiting at the end, or an entirely new area that leads down a completely different path. All of this dramatically aids with pushing the player to want to venture further. It makes the world feel connected and like it could be a real place. There's a tone to the lands between. It goes back to that quote from earlier. It's alien but intriguing. All the characters you meet fit right into the space. Everything has this sense of melancholy, packaged in with an unusual beauty to the world. Characters are intriguing. You get to hear bits and pieces about them that leaves you curious, and is refreshing in comparison to the dialogue and lore dumps often found in other games. I also like the tone and strangeness found in the characters' voices that you meet. It fits right into the world, adds to the aura of mystery, and the whole thing feels like some kind of fever dream. It's also great to see so much Welsh in the game. As a Welsh person myself, I was pleasantly surprised, as it's not often I see Wales represented in gaming, but there's many references. The character Blythe, his name is a Welsh word that literally means wolf. Then you have Rani the Witch, that's voiced by actress Amy Fionn Edwards. The name Rani is very close to some female Welsh names like Rhian and Rhiannon. Rhian in Welsh means maiden, which is obviously a word brought up quite a lot in Elden Ring.
You are maidenless.
Bruh.
Then there's Caelid, which sounded quite Welsh to me when I first came across this place. I later discovered that K, or Kai in how it's pronounced in Welsh, means field, and lid means inflammation or infection, which of course I think we'd all say matches up perfectly well to the area. It's really cool to see these references. And then there's this guy that literally sounds like he grew up down the road from me.
Perhaps you could spare some runes. Believe it or not, I studied glintstone sorceries at the Academy of Rea Lucaria.
I can only praise FromSoft for this next point. In a world with so much microtransaction bullshit festering the industry currently, pay to play early, loot boxes, stores filled with experience boosts, cosmetic or pay to skip entire parts of the game you're paying for, it's just a breath of fresh air to see none of this in Elden Ring. I think it shows that Miyazaki and his team care about the integrity of their games. They have ambitions to make something great, and not just to use slimy methods to generate profit at the cost of the world that's being created. They deserve all the praise for this. It's just about making a damn good game that they are passionate about, and more developers should take note. If you just focus on making a good game, you might have the opportunity to receive awards, to build a fan base that has faith in your team in the long term, and to make record-breaking numbers on the sales of your product. Companies, hire actual developers that are gamers first, people who care about making a good product and have passion for what they're doing. Not these other types that have entered this industry, especially in the past decade. They don't understand games or just want to squeeze as much money out of players without any actual passion for what they're making, or any talent. Sorry, I got a bit ranty there, but predatory microtransactions in gaming, is something we shouldn't accept just because it's becoming the norm. It's growing, and companies keep trying to move the goalposts on this. We need to praise the teams that are putting quality of what they're creating first, knowing that if a good game is created, the revenue will simply come from that, and in the long term will often be all the more profitable anyway. I enjoy the mechanics of how players interact with one another in the Souls series and Elden Ring. The concept of leaving messages on the ground for other players to come across in their own world is unique. Be it to give helpful clues or let others know about a secret door or cave you've discovered up ahead, or to leave unhelpful messages trying to trick another player into jumping off a cliff. You also have the random messages, things like Fortnite, or seeing the word snake before a ladder that I'm pretty sure is referencing that really long climbing sequence in Metal Gear Solid.
What a thrill.
Then there's the bloodstain mechanic that gives the ability to witness how other players may have died, giving you a clue as to what danger may lie ahead. Or seeing these marks everywhere in a room to showcase that you're in for a bad time. Miyazaki had mentioned in an interview previously that when designing the first Souls game, he had this idea to create a communication system between the players that would feel something like email, a distant message from one player to another, and not direct communication, to give that sense that you are isolated while up against challenges, but that, at times, there are others overcoming these same obstacles in their own journeys that may leave a helpful message, a hint, or just some words of encouragement. Don't give up, skeleton. The whole system is unique. It helps the world feel more alive, further promotes a sense of community, but doesn't detract from the tone of isolation and difficulty. Then we have invasions and summoning of other players. I've always enjoyed a random invasion. They're fun and add another element to the game. I wish that they happened more organically and often though. I like that feeling of having to adapt to the situation unexpectedly, within whatever environment I'm currently travelling through. It further adds to the experience and creates moments of surprise and adrenaline, though I know that I may be in the minority when it comes to this. But I think that it makes the game more fun when invasions are spontaneous. It felt very much that in Elden Ring, these just wouldn't really happen unless you used items and waited in an area to artificially create the situation. Then if we think of covenants, it would have been great if the system was expanded in the game. Perhaps there could be a number of covenants that the player could join that had more multiplayer impact. Perhaps the player could receive some awards when fighting other players under a covenant, such as a unique ability or pieces of armor. These multiplayer aspects are definitely unique and help to make Elden Ring more special, and I think there's still untapped potential when it comes to these systems, which FromSoft can further build on in the future. Ah, that beautiful word, freedom.
But they'll never take our freedom!
I like games that allow us to express ourselves as players, to choose what style of character we want to play or tackle challenges with many different options. Elden Ring has many choices when it comes to playstyle. There's a large variety of weapons with many different ashes of war that give a plethora of abilities. Combine that with the different magic types and the spirit summons, and you have a wide selection to choose from, which greatly expands the build diversity in the game and how you express yourself as a player. This allows the player to approach situations in a variety of different ways, building into the many classic fantasy archetypes, a warrior, mage, rogue, archer, and others in between. You can really build a unique character. Or, if you identify as a mushroom. Just one difficulty setting. I like this. Perhaps a hot take, perhaps not, but let me see if I can convince you. One difficulty allows the developers to design around one truly intended gameplay experience, and the reason why it works very well in Elden Ring is because you have so many tools at your disposal. You have the ability to use different weapons or change up your playstyle. Go explore in a different direction for a while to level up if a boss is giving you trouble, or using summoning spirits if you're a pussy. No, but to be real, it can be quite fun to experiment with the different summoning options. I also might have used them in 1 or 2 fights. Screw these guys. But come on, did you really beat Melania if you used summons? Gotta solo that boss. All of these options that the game gives you, it allows the player to alter the difficulty internally with your own playstyle, whether you want to play more defensively with shields, change up your abilities, or come back to a tough enemy once you've leveled up. When you beat the game, you know that you did it at the intended gameplay experience. When you defeat Margit, Radagon, or Millennia, and tell others, everyone knows what that took, and overcoming the challenge holds more weight. There wasn't multiple difficulties that shallow the experience. You beat the game the way it was intended. And that leads us to my final point, and probably the most widely discussed. Souls games are famous for their combat. I think it's one of the biggest reasons the Souls series sprouted an entire genre that followed. Many players recognize Souls combat as one of the best in the industry, and its influence upon other games that came after is obvious. I think when the first Dark Souls came out in 2011, it was a revolution on how action combat could be done in an RPG, and really stood out amongst games during that time. Since then, FromSoft have continued to build on this combat system with each Souls game that followed, and then experimented further with titles such as Bloodborne and Sekiro. Once Elden Ring came around, it looks to have been an amalgamation of all these games, becoming the final evolution of everything FromSoft had learned so far, and it really shows. I think Elden Ring really does showcase this with its combat. It throws so many options at you, and it's hard not to praise the game. Its design feels tight, responsive, and we were able to use so many builds. I think the only criticism I can say here is that, as the bosses become more fast-paced, more anime and extreme, in the DLC for example, it started to feel like the attack windows to respond for us as the player would become less and less, which can sometimes cause combat in these moments to feel less fun. Perhaps the parry system from Sekiro could be added in some form or another, if there ever was an Elden Ring 2, as long as it didn't trivialize bosses of course. Or if not, FromSoft could continue to evolve the combat system to its next iteration, as Elden Ring did really feel like the combination of everything they had learnt. To summarise, the combat is usually the main reason people play Souls games. It really is fun and one of the best in the industry. Hitboxes are tight, animations are smooth, there's a weight to everything and it feels great to play. The game just feels like an epic adventure that you go on. It asks you for your attention. If you haven't played yet and are curious about starting for the first time, I'd encourage you to give it your focus, patience, and a bit of effort. Much like an epic fantasy tale such as Lord of the Rings or The Never-Ending Story. By the end, you'll feel like you went on a grand adventure full of twists and turns, and be glad you did. I think Elden Ring is a masterpiece. It's a special game, and has become one of my favourites of all time. Thanks for watching. I also made a video talking about what could possibly be improved in Elden Ring, so check that out if you're interested. My name is Talix, and with that, I'll see you in the next one.